Erin, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Wonderful to see you, Matt.
You know, Erin, I was excited to have you here and get your opinions on this subject, which touches so much worldwide, to so many people, and that is this issue of avoidable blindness. Of course, I was very fascinated to see the innovations that BVI is bringing to the forefront, including some of the new bionics products. But I also wonder, whether this all eventually trickles down to help communities that are less fortunate. I don't know if, trickle down innovation in that sense works, or if there are things that we need to do as an industry to make sure we are providing adequate care in places like emerging countries in Africa or in Latin America. What are your thoughts on that?
I think trickle down is relevant here. Every organization needs to understand how it's slicing up the pie in terms of how it's giving back. I said that we lead with innovation, yes, but part of leading with innovation is giving us the ability to do better work in emerging markets. Working with organizations like Orbis, Ascaris. The more that we grow as industry, the more resources we have to support those types of organizations and therefore provide care.
That's a really great point, because now that I think of it, Orbis, of course, has the Flying Eye Hospital. What is that if not innovation? So certainly, I would think modern technologies could make it to a plane like that.
Modern technologies, but also, if I look at BVI, such a huge component of what we do are the consumables, and making sure that we have sterile consumables that can be donated and used in those types of environments where infection might be a greater risk. What better can we provide to those types of institutions, making it easy to access care?
Well said. Well, there's a lot of different turf that we could cover in terms of avoidable blindness. We've got cataract and cataract backlogs for sure. There's also issues of glaucoma, particularly in Africa. And then you've got your retina. And even earlier, I was speaking to somebody who was in the refractive side, but making some good points about the management of myopia and the myopia epidemic. We as industry can make the most inroads at this point in time. And what sort of subspecialty do you see being fertile for the treatment of avoidable blindness?
Oh my goodness, Matt, I love this question. I get very passionate about this, as you do. I've spent my entire career in ophthalmology, and I think that the world is our oyster. And I guess that the good and the bad answer to this is that there are so many opportunities to help. That's bad because it means we have more patients to see, but it's good in the sense that I think that we've got a lot of great therapies and technologies to help us there. Obviously the myopia epidemic is considerable. There's lots of research being done in that area, but I still strongly believe that cataract is so avoidable, and we have such great treatments for that it's what I would call the lowest hanging fruit. I think that as an industry, and I mean surgeons and companies combined, we really need to come together and target that. I think we've all seen the social impact studies where it's one elderly individual going blind due to cataracts actually takes out many more people in the workforce, right? So it kind of brings down the family unit and affects society in a great way. And the fact is, this isn't aspirational treatments that we have for cataract surgery. We have this. It's a well-oiled machine. We can go after this and tackle it quickly and efficiently.
Some other interviewees in our series were some executives from companies in India. Now, those are interesting stories because, over the course of Indian history, let's say since the 1970s, they were able to reduce the price of an IOL to very little. Let's say, I don't know what the figure is exactly, but maybe $1 or $2. When they're engaging a market like Africa or Latin America, they're able to do that at even market efficiencies because essentially they're still selling into those markets. But having said that, I'm curious how the West is set up to engage these emerging markets. So in other words, are we thinking more in terms of donations, or are there market forces that are still available even in Western companies that can provide care to these emerging parts of the world?
Oh, Matt, I think it's both, right? I think that, obviously there's lots of great philanthropies established that we discussed a little bit, ago to help with those emerging markets. But I think at the end of the day, it's coming up with innovative business models, because large organizations can't just continue to look at these markets as charitable. I think that we've seen lots of success, outside of ophthalmology with just different types of business models in those markets. So has ophthalmology tapped into that yet? Not necessarily, but do I think that that's on the horizon? Definitely.
One curious thing that I've started to notice in some of the business readings that I do, things like, social entrepreneurs or social capitalists, while some of that has happened in our space, not a whole lot. There's still a lot, based on the bottom line. When we go to OIS, for example, a lot of those companies there are sort of built to sell. With new generations coming up, millennials who appreciate things other than cold hard cash, that whether there might be a time to start changing some of those models for more social benefit. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think that that's already happening today. At BVI right now, we're really focused on environmental impact. And I know that this is a conversation about avoidable blindness, but I think that if you start looking at that in the larger context of what you're talking about with millennials and kind of the greater good, as an organization, we're trying to focus on what are the future trends of meaningful work for our employees, for our surgeons, for our patients. And that's something that we're taking steps into, which, Matt, it's not necessarily all about financials. We're not saying, we're trying to profit off of XYZ just for the profit. We also look at it and say, okay, what's better? How are we translating that message to our customers? And we understand that we're in this together, customers and company. That's what I mean about creating shared value. It's a different mentality than, I would say, routine capitalism.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. And especially because, sitting through so many meetings and so many symposium over the year, I hear a common refrain, which is, at the end of the day, it's all about the patient. I sometimes have a hard time believing that, because there's so much profit that's going on in our industry. It doesn't always seem to be about the greater good, but I think that it's possible to change that with methods like you're talking about here, and with more corporate social responsibility.
I love corporate social responsibility. It's one of my favorite topics. I have lots of friends in the major strategic organizations here, and that's such a relevant top of mind topic, and so many of the resources in ophthalmology are channeled towards that. And that's why I think as an organization, BVI, but then broader, we lead with innovation so that we can reinvest and make sure that we're doing what's right for the community. And it's right, we always bring it back to the patient, but the patient has lots of different needs too. And our customers, our surgeons, have lots of different needs too. And so if you start thinking about it's all about the patient, yes, it's about the vision, the visual quality, but we're also talking about avoidable blindness and what that means to their lives. It's not necessarily that they need different nuanced technology that might be available in certain markets. Sometimes what we're talking about of keeping the patient in mind is providing routine cataract care that will make significant difference, not only for them, but for their families and their communities.
Absolutely. And I think a topic that comes up again and again in some of these interviews is access to care. In leaving the term communities there, I think it's ex-US, ex-Europe. It starts to get into the broader areas of the world, areas like that I live in Vietnam here, which, certainly there's a lot more to do. So anyway, I'm excited that you're speaking about all of this.
I kind of said it in the beginning, and I don't think I was very eloquent, but I think the greatest part about ophthalmology is that people who work in this industry, you, me, all of our friends, we're in it for a reason, and it's because we want to progress that standard of care. We want to impact the lives of people beyond one surgical transaction. It's about preserving sight. And there's something about being able to provide not only that quality of sight, but the quality of life that I think is inspiring and really makes these types of conversations so important and so relevant. Frankly, we need to have these types of conversations more, because that type of sharing of these passions that we have of why we're in this industry is probably just going to attract more talent to the space, and we can do even more good.
Gosh, that's a great point. Well, you're also part of AL, which over time has transitioned from ophthalmic women leaders to ophthalmic world leaders. It does seem to have more of a worldview now. What do you think Al's thoughts are on topics like avoidable blindness?
Yes, I've been involved with OWL for my entire career, and it's a wonderful organization. Our focus is diversity, inclusion, and really developing leaders. I'd say that the more that we can develop diverse leaders in ophthalmology, the more that these topics are going to be addressed. You know, just in the same way that our patients need surgeons who understand them, who look like them, who have a similar mindset or can converse on that level. I mean, that diversity of our physician population is so important. And in the same vein, that diversity of our corporate environment and community is very important. And it's just going to raise these topics, right? You mentioned earlier, the millennial generation, being focused on maybe different values. We welcome that. And at OWL, that's our goal, is to try to make sure that those voices are heard, that those voices are developed and included in these types of conversations.
Fantastic. Well, I think with the time left, we're going to just pull up a few images on the screen.
I mean, this is why we're in this business. So my father, sister, and brother are all ophthalmologists. I am the black sheep of the family, Matt, as you very well know. Speaking with my family about the moments that are most impactful in their surgical careers, this demonstrates that. This is taking our care into the places that are needed. This woman, I'm not sure the purpose of her wearing those glasses, but this is why I say cataract surgery is a relatively easy surgery to perform. We have so much behind it. It's so proven. I think we start with that. And as it says on this picture, make vision count.
Erin, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. You've been certainly a breath of fresh air all the way from America to Vietnam and in between.
Thank you so much, Matt.